ever read a birth chart, did a moon cycle ritual before I knew this was the path I was taking. I was actually an actor. And this week, the astrology has reminded me that the mission I had then hasn't actually changed. It's just changed costumes. So before I did this work, business coaching, astrology, my whole mission was reflecting the human experience back so people felt less alone. So we felt more connected because I believed then and I believe now that getting in touch with our shared humanity is incredibly healing and has the potential to shift everything in how we behave and how we treat one another and how we treat the planet that we are very much a part of. And this week's astrology is reminding me that that mission I had as a young child has never changed. So we are going to go through the astrology the astrology transits of the week of July 19th. And I'm going to be talking about how a pivot might actually be your original mission, just finding a new medium. So we're going to move through chronologically, and I'm going to share a little bit about the big pivot that I am sitting right in the heart of right now. Okay, so let's get into it. On July 19th, we are sitting with a Mars in Gemini, sextile Saturn in Aries at 14 degrees, and the moon also is entering Libra. So Mars in Gemini, you may have felt yourself feeling a lot of energy, a lot of momentum or drive towards collecting new ideas, new connections, new information. Uh, this Mars and Gemini energy really wants us to sprint down a rabbit hole. And with this sextile to Saturn, we are being given a structure to sprint into rather than just spinning. So that Martian energy, it needs a mission. It needs something to do. So if you are just kind of like out in the ethers, grabbing all the information with nowhere to go, very Mars and Gemini vibe, it can easily spin into overwhelm, anxiety, and burnout. So, Saturn is answering to Mars in Gemini because Mars is the ruler of Aries, and they are now being in relationship in a way that is giving you some kind of idea of like, where do all of these new ideas fit into like a structure. And, with Saturn and Aries, I'm feeling into like, how do we want to be the leaders of our own lives, of our community, our families, our careers, whatever it is for you. So my personal rabbit hole this week has been thinking about all of these different skills I have cultivated over the course of my life and how that fits into transferable skills into an unknown future. I'm going to be getting more into this throughout the episode, but we are sitting in July here, this pivotal moment of 2026 and of much larger cycles. This is one of the months that we kind of looked ahead to as astrologers as like, okay, everything's kind of coming to a head here. And so what does this actually mean in our lives now that we are living it? And I have gotten a ton of clarity and insight just kind of like popping through this week. And I will say some of it has come from this book I picked up from the library, Peak Picks, I Eat the Stars by Sarah Wilson. And it's got me really awakening, I would say, to what's next for our society, our humanity. And that has my head spinning into how do I want to show up in my everyday life? How do I want to, look to the future, knowing that there are so many variables that are outside of our control, and coming back to what is it that I am bringing to the table in my own life, in my business. And I'm thinking about these transferable skills, so to speak, that will be important no matter what direction the world takes. Things like empathy and adaptability. I've learned a lot about sitting in conflict and conflict resolution over these past couple of years, and space holding, how vital that is in the moment we're sitting in right now and as things continue to unfold, and how much I've been kind of buying into this old way of being that, like how to build a business online. And, those things are all still true as far as like, you got to find your niche. You have to post on Instagram 100 times a day if you want to be seen. Those are true for the old world. And the old world is dying. And what's coming next? We're in this liminal space. So thinking about what do we want to carry through for that. And I realize that I've gotten ahead of myself, even in this first more fast moving transit that we're sitting here with the Mars sextile Saturn. So asking you, get curious about what you're feeling driven to collect as far as new ideas. What are the skills that you've learned and picked up along the way that maybe you haven't been given credit for, or given yourself credit for, because you're trying to fit into this narrow system where you're expected to burn yourself out. So what happens when that goes away, and what's left? Okay, so moving on, July 20th, Jupiter in Leo will trine Neptune at 4 degrees. The 4-degree marker for the fire signs, for the fixed signs. So I'm looking at Leo and Aries and Sagittarius. And then I'm looking at, again, Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, and brain fart, Mercury is retrograde, and Aquarius, obviously. Okay. So these, if you've got important placements around the 4-degree in these signs, then you might be feeling this a little bit more personally. So Jupiter trine Neptune, this is optimistic, this is transcendent, and it's full of possibilities. Like, what is the new dream? If the old world is dying, is crumbling in our hands, then what can we imagine forward? Imagine into being. Neptune in Aries, it's the animating life force. What's the dream that enlivens you, that speaks to your heart, that you want to fully express? So this transit is good for letting that vision get bigger than you've perhaps been willing to hold space for previously, because you're just trying to get by in a dying system. So whatever threshold you're standing in right now, let your imagination transcend your current reality. And I've been reflecting on the ways that I've kind of tapped into this sense that the way things are now, the matrix that we live in, is not as it is meant to be. And I mean, perhaps it is. And there's a larger, meaning to all of this. And I think it's time, it's past due for those old institutions that, we have found so much solace and safety in. Some of us, many of us, have never found solace and safety in the institutions that are meant to hold us. But now it's like collectively, we're really understanding that the institutions, the safe, steady job, perhaps is not so safe and steady. So then what's next? This is a real opportunity for us to dream something new in. And let's see, the same day we get the Jupiter opposition to Pluto. So again, Jupiter in Leo at 4 degrees, Pluto in Aquarius at 4 degrees. And this is one of the big transits of the year. All of the astrologers have been watching because it harkens to this larger Jupiter-Pluto dance that began in 2020 when Jupiter and Pluto made their conjunction in Capricorn. So we all remember 2020, and there was this real consolidation of wealth and power. And it was a time that, the rich got richer and kind of took that opportunity of a destructive force, a pandemic that really shifted everything, and took that opportunity to to hoard more wealth, essentially. And now we're reaching kind of the full moon moment of what was seeded back in 2020. And this is happening on the Leo Aquarius axis. And this is really interesting because we are just moving into a new eclipse cycle that holds the North Node in Aquarius, the South Node in Leo. And that opposition point is a point of tension. Whatever was seeded in 2020 is now reaching a climax. And so there's this pull, this push pull between, how power has been consolidated and what's the opportunities for growth right now. And feeling into this larger transit of the eclipses soon to be moving at the end of the month, or sorry, the nodes of the moon moving into Leo and Aquarius. We have this south node moving into Leo, and I'm feeling into the tarot imagery of the Tower card of the king being knocked out of the tower. We have this kind of cultural obsession with celebrities, with the figureheads, and perhaps now with the opposition, there's a potential for some rebalancing of, all of that power that got consolidated into kind of more institutional, old school forces. Now power is moving towards the collective, the future. And there's so much that's happening around power and wealth with these technologies. The people who run AI are just getting so insanely wealthy. And, I want to make a note here because, I work with spiritual entrepreneurs, and one of the big things we bump up against is this feeling like we can't have money because it's evil. And there's a real big difference between having an overflow of money in your business, in your life, where you have enough, you have more than enough, you've got an overflow, you can share with friends, you can share with your community, you feel stable and comfortable, with like extreme, disgusting hoarding, like fucking trillionaire, really? I know Musk is no longer a trillionaire, but it's like, why? Why? And so I just want to say, like, the numbers, like with Pluto, things get so extreme, either like extremely large or extremely small. And that extremeness of wealth consolidation, it's just so vast and incomprehensible that, like, if you're a millionaire, I don't like, that's totally fine. Like, especially in, what money represents and symbolizes right now. That's cool, especially if you are, actively sharing some of your wealth. So just want to throw that out there as I'm kind of going off on a rant, because the Jupiter opposite Pluto, it is another moment where we're coming up against this consolidation of power. And I'm feeling into, again, the liminal space. Things are up in the air right now, both with, the symbolism of all of these planets being in fire and air. Things are moving up. Nothing has landed and settled yet. And so with that, what is emerging when more of us are staying awake through this liminal threshold moment that we're standing in? What can we expand into? What's the opportunity here? So the next day, we got our first quarter moon in Libra at 28 degrees. This is July 21st. Then thereafter, the moon enters Scorpio, and Jupiter then sextiles Uranus. And so first, let's bring it back into our bodies, because as I'm sitting into these big collective transits, some of us are feeling it very personally. Some of us might be just kind of witnessing it from the sidelines, but the moon always has a way of bringing us back to our bodies. So coming back to, again, what was seated in the new moon in Cancer last week for you, and what are you coming up against with that original intention that you brought in? And again, I've been reading I Eat the Stars by Sarah Wilson. And, each chapter starts with a couple of quotes. And I really liked this, her bringing to my awareness that in Chinese, the word for crisis means opportunity. And I believe it was Greek that word means decision. So first quarter moons are crisis points. And, we are in a collective crisis, right? There's so much that is changing, that is unstable, that is being disrupted. And with Jupiter sextile Uranus, Uranus is the great disruptor, and Jupiter brings us opportunities. And at that first quarter moon point, we get to make a decision. Again, coming back to this, everything is up in the air right now. So what's the decision that you want to make? What's the opportunity you want to seize? There's an opportunity for breaking through perhaps a mindset that no longer fits this new direction we're taking. And how can you make that decision from a heart-centered place? Leo rules the heart. So yeah, just thinking back to my kind of new moon intentions, still very much thinking like, all right, I got to make my next sale, land my next one-on-one coaching client. And between now and then, again, these transits are hitting my chart. So personally, like sitting right on top of my Aries moon, it's all just kind of dissolved. And Jupiter offers this larger view, this more expansive, coherent view that holds a lot of different parts all at once into a coherent thread of understanding. And I have gotten this sense that I am letting go of being so niche in my business. I love working with spiritual entrepreneurs and helping them grow their business. That still feels very much a part of my mission. And this Neptune sitting on my moon in my 10th house of career and work in the world is telling me it's time to dissolve the more rigid edges of that. Even though everything I've been taught about building a business online is you need to niche down, you need to be super specific. And I'm just so feeling aware of the liminal space that we're living in, is that I want to open up to working with different kinds of people and having a different kind of business model that allows me to be out in the real world more, bringing some more of my energy to my local community and starting to offer astrology readings, not just for spiritual entrepreneurs growing a business and kind of having this larger package to walk you through step by step. Again, still very happy to do that. I love that work, but I'm wanting to open up to really hold space. Again, what I started with, this feeling into how vital that is to be able to hold space for humans going through this liminal time. And again, you might be feeling it personally in your relationships. Maybe you're hitting those midlife transits like me and questioning everything. And it's like, how do you sit in that liminal space? And, as humans, we're not designed to go through those kind of initiation moments alone. We're designed to do it held by other humans. And so I want to start offering that to people. So that being said, keep your eyes open because I'm going to be offering some specials on astrology readings. So stay tuned for that. I digress. So something is shifting in our thinking, in our lives. There's an opportunity here, an opportunity to go deep. So ask yourself, what relationship, what identity, what role, what life direction is asking to evolve right now? And this can be a period that sudden insights just come through and then you can't unsee it. Okay, so July 22nd, the sun enters Leo. So we're entering Leo season. And this Leo season has a very particular flavor, as we've been talking about. We're going to be getting the South Node in Leo. We're going to be getting an eclipse in Leo. And, those Leo archetypes that some of us are familiar with are being asked to go deeper. So, again, coming back to my acting years, that Leo Aquarius access is very much the archetype of the one on stage and the audience. And what's the deeper mission of that ritual of getting on stage and reflecting something back. And there's such a beautiful exchange of energy between the actor, the singer, the performer, and the audience. And each one receives and gives to one another. They can't exist without the other. And so I think some of what's being brought here is some humbleness to the big Leo archetype. And I think, Leo in its higher vibration is very humble. It sees that, the light in me is the light in you, that namaste, and can recognize that shining your light fully does not have to diminish anyone else's light. In fact, it can be an act of reflecting back and celebrating one another's unique expression that we have here in the world. And so then on July 23rd, the very first aspect that Leo makes, the sun in Leo makes, is a square to Chiron. So it's immediately bumping up against some wounding. Chiron has recently entered Taurus, and our wounds about feeling like things are stable enough to feel safe are coming to the surface. And, we are in this period of what feels like a lot of groundlessness. And that's very tender. We need to have enough steadiness to feel pleasure and to feel like there is enough for everyone. And so if there's this feeling like things are too unstable right now and I need to just kind of stick with what's safe, that makes it challenging to take that risk, to be vulnerable, to fully express yourself, to be big and bold the way Leo likes to be sometimes. And so just naming this out loud rather than performing certainty, pretending that you're certain in this uncertain world, can help actually with the settledness. And again, coming back to the essence, the heart center of your mission, of why you're here on Earth in this time, can be its own kind of steadiness within you. Okay, so on the same day, July 23rd, Mercury stations direct at 16 degrees of Cancer. And this Mercury retrograde period for me has been super reflective and revisionary. And so I wonder what's been kind of moving through your world in a new way. And whatever that is, starting to shift towards a forward momentum in implementation. There's the surface level of Mercury retrogrades, the tech glitches, the delayed flights that we're all, have seen the memes for. And, as you're tuning in more and more to astrology on a regular basis and really contemplating and observing and witnessing and, consciously being in relationship with these transits, you'll find that you start sinking deeper and deeper into what is this all about for me. And, as I'm saying, like my business model and niche have totally shifted just in the last week, like pretty much right after that Mercury Kazemi with the sun. And so, y'all are hearing about this first, my handful of subscribers and listeners here. And, as Mercury stations direct, I'm going to start really, putting together the new offers and bringing that forward. So asking yourself, what has been revising? What have you been remembering about yourself that's ready to move now? Okay, so final couple of transits here. July 24th, Mercury in Cancer sextiles Venus in Virgo. And this is a nice, easy, pleasurable communication kind of energy. So maybe just reaching out to someone and, offering something tangible, that Venus in Virgo, like, and showing some care with Mercury in Cancer. Like, how have you been? Can I bring by some soup for your grandma? I don't know. Or, for those of you who are in the business realm, checking in on your clients and just offering a little bit of value that lets them know you've been thinking about them. And then receiving that for yourself as well, noticing who comes by to offer sweet acts of service for you and receiving that with gratitude. Okay. So we've got that. Now we're moving into another biggie, the Neptune sextile Pluto. So another one of the big transits we're sitting in here. And the moon also is moving into Sagittarius. And again, that sextile is stimulating its movement, its connection. And Neptune in Aries has been dissolving the idea of the leader. And I think what we have here is some spiritual warrior energy for a new vision for the future. And a way for us to show up as leaders in circle. So rather than like the one head, the one guru and the charismatic leader, what does it look like when each of us has something to bring to the table? And I'm just imagining this big circular table where we can all see one another and feeling into, uh, you know, the old way of trying to rally the masses, having this one, like, yeah, charismatic leader, and how now where we're at, it might be more about like a collective awakening that starts with that individual healing process and ripples out and does that magic thing that life does, where it just starts popping up in different pockets all at once. So I'm feeling into, stepping into some of that humble Leo energy, that Leo Aquarius access, where, and thinking about like what does make a truly great king or queen or, sovereign. It is like you're in humble service to the collective. So trusting that whatever it is you're doing, whatever those skills are that you are bringing, your unique gifts, even if they don't fit into the current mold, trusting that you showing up to your life, to your business, to your people, your family, your friends, your community, that is part of this larger emergence of awakening. Okay, I will end it there. And if this landed, hit like and subscribe, share with a friend. This will really help me grow this channel and reach more people who might need to hear it. So, like I said, I've got some new offers taking shape that are reflecting this shift that I am moving through. So, when they are ready, you will be the first to hear them. So, drop a comment. Tell me where you are feeling into that liminal space right now. Is it personally, relationally, in your business, in your career, collectively? I want to hear from you, and I will see you next